This video is brought to you by catbeast.com. Design your own custom snapbacks and hats.
How's it going, guys? My name's Wilson. Before I start this video, I would like to give a shout out to my sponsor, catbeast.com. Catbeast.com is your one-stop shop for custom snapbacks made from people all around the world. You can design your own custom hats, snapbacks, beanies, and finding other great designs that suit your fitting. Now on to the video. NBA All-Stars, not superstars, getting Supermax extensions when they haven't even led their team to a single playoff series win makes no sense. Non-top 15 players getting paid similar salaries to the Steph Currys and Giannis of the world, an absolute travesty. Desperate teams scared to have their best players leave or demand a trade could be better off when the number one guy has proven to not go far in the postseason and stink it up in crucial moments time after time. Although these are not Supermax contracts, former recently role players given a boatload of money, especially coming from the famous summer of 2016 bad contract university. Take a look at Chandler Parsons, 4 years 94, Nick Batum, 5 years 120, Hassan Whiteside of the Miami Heat, 98 million, hasn't been relevant since. Andre, who's not even 30-year-old Drummond yet, 127 million, produced 0 wins for the Pistons, couldn't get out of the first round, even though he played with LeBron and Kevin Durant afterwards, still lost in round 1. And Mike Conley, who's a likable guy, but at one point made the most money, 5 years 153 several years ago, didn't play up to the highest standards of level, failing to make it out the first round since. While some of the most deserving players 1000% deserves their Supermax contracts as franchise superstars, always in the MVP conversation, Giannis, 5 years 228, many now consider him the very best player in the game, 2-time regaining MVP. Nikola Jokic, 5 years 270, in the conversation for number 1 player as well. Luka Doncic, 5 years 207, Steph Curry, 5 years 201, already his second Supermax deal, and Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers, 4 years 196, the face of the process, strong MVP candidates in the very prime of his career. Now let's take a look at the non-superstars absolutely not deserving of such a lucrative deal and how badly their team's about to be ruined. There will only be a handful of superstars in the league. If you're not one of the top 20 best players in the NBA, the fact of the matter is you're not in the superstar discussion. Let's start off with the disastrous, not looking very promising franchise, the awful Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal, a name in trade discussions and many wanting him to join a contender for years now as a second or third option. The 29-year-old signed a shocking 5-year deal to remain in DC, owns the second largest contract in NBA history behind Jokic, an absolute travesty given the fact that 1, he hasn't even gone past the second round after 10 seasons, and 2, his numbers of 23.2 points in just 40 games played a season ago, 45% shooting when his team was 17 and 23 with him, when it's proven Beal's simply not good enough to be a superstar game changer, and 3, making the postseason just 1 time in the last 4 seasons and now approaching 30. Washington still thinks Beal's the guy to build around. Absolutely delusional, straight up. Decisions like these are why the franchise hasn't won 50 regular season games since the 70s, easily one of the worst contracts in the league, $250 million price tag, a rare no trade clause for 5 years. Just the 10th player to hold the no trade clause. Most of these guys won titles and all-time greats. Only Carmelo Anthony and John Stockton ringless, and Beal not even as good as prime Melo. Not only are the Wizards in the bottom of the East, 0 hope to be serious threats, missing more than half his games a season ago to being banged up this season early on, averaging just under 24 a game doesn't stand out if he can't perform as well as 2021 Beal. A 34-year-old Bradley Beal in 2027 will be making an absurd $57 million a year, a 15% trade kicker if he does get traded in 2027. Washington forced to pay an extra $8.5 million for a player who many don't even consider to be top 35. 2 years from now, if Beal declines, is he still going to be better than Desmond Baines or Tyrese Maxey in 2024? Not even showing any signs of urgency to contend for a title. Guess nobody can blame him for wanting the big money without the expectations of winning much, continuing to create for himself. Very good but not not good enough. Only been a 3-time All-Star. After this season, Luka Doncic will already be a 4-time All-Star and surpass Beal, who came into the league 6 years after him. Nothing about Beal's contract relates to winning games or team success. Also kills Washington's chances of pairing him with another high-quality star. And don't tell me Kristaps Porzingis is the answer for making the Wizards a threat. If the franchise has any sort of functional thinking, Beal would have been shifted already, and the reset button would have been set. Suffering many losses a few years longer, filling up unnecessary cap space, the organization honestly deserves most of the backlash. Have they not learned from overpaying Gilbert Arenas and John Wall? Beal accepted the money, will get criticized here and there for underachieving. Paying a guy who's 10 years into his career, taking up 40% of the cap space, had the opportunity to hit free agency, could have made somewhere like a 4-year $200 million deal to compete on a better team come April, May, and June, but making most of his Benjamins just to only play regular season games seems more important for Beal. If he does remain a Wizard until 2027, Bradley Beal might never see himself in a playoff series until after. Rudy Gobert, off-season 2020, 5 years $205 extension, the largest deal for a center. At the time, of course, Shaquille O'Neal didn't take too kindly. At least Gobert didn't request for the full Supermax, and what looked like him and Don Mitchell would be contending in the West for years. Made All-NBA 3 of the previous 4 seasons, 2 DPOY awards before accepting the deal, 4 consecutive postseasons, way more accomplished than Beal. Rudy became a first-time All-Star 2020, the type of player who deserves a max for his defensive production, but not Supermax material, being an offensive liability. But thanks to the brilliant Danny Ainge, Minnesota gambled on Rudy like he was the second coming of Kevin Garnett to Boston 2.0. 5 first-round picks, a bunch of solid role players giving up. Gobert will be making more than Luka till at least after 2025. Him and Towns a terrible fit, both too slow. Gets run out the gym, and other teams just keep draining threes on them. Despite how much the advanced stats praise Rudy, he's not a superstar. First Don Mitchell, and now Ant Edwards barely passes him the ball. Donovan excelling now in Cleveland, while Rudy's making his new team worse somehow than last season. Looking like part of another dysfunction, still can't make a jump shot or dribble, too old school. If Minnesota don't make the playoffs and Utah ends up getting a top 5 pick and finishes a better record than the Wolves, would be the biggest finesse of all time. Things seem to be a little bit off with his teammates already, chemistry issues that never get solved. Wolves look like they were taking a step forward a year ago, now appearing to take 2 steps backwards. Russell Westbrook, Supermax with OKC in 2017, 5 years nearly $207. After having a historical season-winning MVP and first-team All-NBA, Russ talked about as a top 5 player at the time, handed the keys to the Thunder franchise after Kevin Durant left at 28 years old in his very prime. Filled up the stat sheet when being the lone star, had his chances being the number 2 for KD, but failed to play his best in the biggest playoff moments. Many foresaw how his last couple seasons of the deal would play out, relying on insane athleticism, a fluky jump shot, needing the ball in his hands. His first year when the Supermax kicked in, Russ was no longer the best player on his team, it was Paul George. Westbrook terrible in the playoffs, shot 36%, lost to Dame Lillard, followed by Houston forcing themselves to get rid of Clint Capella, drag 6'5" PJ Tucker at center to suit for Russ's game, terrible versus the Lakers in the bubble, to almost getting swept by Philly, while with the Wizards, the only playoff game he won, shot 3 of 19 from the field, to wanting to contend for a title, ended up tarnishing his legacy with the Lakers. The most criticized player overnight, held the team vulnerable, no cap space, can't play with LeBron, the second highest paid guy in the league in the final year of his deal. To his credit, made a solid transition off the bench, while some even question whether Russ was even an NBA caliber player anymore. John Wall, an absolute travesty of a signing. First 3 seasons after signing, 4 years, 171 extension, 40 games played, empty calories for the awful Rockets, recovering from a torn Achilles in 2020. Houston just sat him out all of 2022. The last couple years extremely dark for the 32-year-old point guard. Similar to Westbrook's game, Wall relies heavily on insane athleticism, turned 27, summer 2017, happened to have his very best season, averaged over 23 points, 10 assists, made his first and only All-NBA team, in the discussion as a top 10 player even. His elite production was supposed to last for another 3-4 years, but the worst possible outcome occurred. Having 4 straight All-Star selections, some thought his prime was only getting started, but ended quickly after falling to Boston round 2, needed knee surgery, 41 games played the following season, numbers down, first round exit to season-ending heel injury late 2018 to tearing his Achilles a month later at his house, first season contract kicked in, Wall plays 0 games. At least there's still hope for a happy ending perhaps with the Clippers. Wall getting brought out and now being a role player will never live up to his contract, but has a chance to compete for a title. Karl Anthony Towns, a whopping 4 years, $224 million extension after 7 seasons, just 2 made postseasons, a combined 3-8 record, averages of under 19 points on 48% shooting, under 13 shot attempts, no longer considered a young player, should be dominating in his prime, but simply not superstar material. Despite what the stats says, hasn't shown good leadership qualities after getting overly emotional against a beatable Memphis team in the 2022 playoffs, to not working with Gobert early in the season, giving a Supermax deal to a guy who hasn't proven to play like a star in the postseason. What's Minnesota thinking? Towns could be making a whopping $60 million in 2028, eligible since he made 13 All-NBA, back as an All-Star after not making the team since 2019. A no-brainer for Towns to accept that fine offer. An awful decision for a small market franchise limiting their cap room. The franchise's continuous mistake over the decades appears to keep growing. Most Wolves fans deep down know Cat simply ain't the guy. Just like how Jokic excels with the Nuggets and beat with the Sixers, Towns way too many flaws, especially on defense. Once the Wolves go nowhere and Towns gets blamed for their disappointments, the Supermax extension awards too many good players who simply not good enough. It should also include guys who finished top 8 for MVP voting in one of the 2 years before their old contract expires. Guys like Bradley Beal and Karl Towns never even finished top 10, both simply not MVP caliber material. Too many times gets called for dumb fouls only to whine about it, then go pick up another foul a minute later, sent to the bench, never finds a rhythm, doesn't seem to take responsibility and blames others for the losses. Poor body control, appears to care more about his numbers than actual winning. Being a bad defender and attempting less than 5 field goal attempts in a freaking playoff game? Are you kidding me? Simply not gonna cut it. Towns also doesn't adapt well in tight moments, doesn't have the right mentality, cares too much about trying to be the best 7-foot outside shooter when he struggles posting up smaller guys at times, has all the talent in the world but refuses to play to his biggest strengths. Wouldn't be shocking if Towns never wins a playoff series with Minnesota. Players to never even get to the conference finals also should not be eligible for the Supermax. While Charlotte did the right thing, did not offer Kemba Walker the full max when he was eligible, could have been getting 5 years $221, but was offered 5 years $160, not even the real max of $188. Boston made the mistake giving Kemba 4 years $140 after making third team All-NBA, career best over 25.5 points. The 28-year-old came off a career season but missed the playoffs with Charlotte, only made it twice in 8 years with the franchise, no second round appearance, heavily declined after 2021, has not been the same, now viewed as a borderline player. While Zach LaVine, after having a terrific 2022 season, finally made the playoffs for the first time, took him 8 years, only made the All-Star team in 2021 and 2022. To getting a max deal, 5 years $215, not a Supermax, since he did not make All-NBA. Now given his struggles early 2023 season, tensions about not wanting to play with the Bulls, LaVine simply hasn't looked like a top 35 player the first 2 months of the season, almost getting rewarded when he made the playoffs 1 time in 8 seasons. All he needed was an All-NBA team to get paid like the Currys and Giannis of the world. Zach LaVine's nowhere near in that level. If he falls off and never makes another All-Star team again, barely anybody would notice. And Klay Thompson did not get the Supermax in 2019, missing All-NBA, which would have been awful given his 2 full years of missed games with brutal injuries, missed out nearly $27 million, could have been making $221 had he made All-NBA, and hasn't been the same. Last time Thompson made All-NBA back in 2016, overlooked while being the third option after Durant's arrival, making $40 million on the year and $43 for 2024. Had Thompson made third team All-NBA, it likely would have been over Kemba Walker, and Golden State absolutely would have given Klay Supermax dollars, while Kemba being eligible wasn't even offered for Charlotte. Thank you so much for watching this video. Out of Russell Westbrook, John Wall, Bradley Beal, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert, which one of these guys will go down having the worst Supermax contracts? Westbrook only got out of the first round one time with Houston, playing number 2 to Harden after signing, while John Wall missed way more games than played. Gobert, too many flaws, while Beal and Karl Towns just signed this past summer, both not looking very promising. Good players, all-star caliber, but not considered franchise players that'll lead their teams to deep playoff runs. Should there be more of a criteria, especially for the smaller market teams, when all these guys signed their crazy extensions? And what should determine a Supermax deal to be? At the time, Russell Westbrook the only one that's deserving on this list, since he actually won an MVP and was considered a top 5 player in the league at one point, while none of these guys even finished top 6 for MVP voting or had a first place vote not even one time. Any one of these 5 guys as your best player simply not getting past the second round. Given some of these disastrous contracts, are the requirements too soft? Let me know in the comments below. I hope each and every one of you having a Merry Christmas, and I hope you finish the year strong and have good opportunities and feel happier than ever. 2023, more good NBA content coming soon. See you next time.